YouTube just released a new update that is going to change the game of YouTube content creation as a whole. Just make sure you stick with me to the end of this video, for I'm about to share all the necessary informations you're about to know about this new podcast updates. Plus, at the end of the video, I'm going to make sure that I share some strong tips with you on how you're going to go about winning the podcast quiz on YouTube. So best friends, let's get to it. In case you are new to this and you definitely want to know what podcast is all about, I'm going to explain it to you in the simplest way possible. Yeah, I know we have three types of content. We have the video content, the written content, and the audio content. So basically, this is the video content, me talking to you via a video clip. The written content are those contents we consume in places like the Facebook and blog posts. In terms of the audio content, we have this kind of contents from the radio stations and the podcast content as well. So for those of you that are camera shy, those of you that don't want to make your face visible on videos, I know this could be one of the biggest reasons you are using on why you are not creating content on YouTube platform. There are several reasons why you should go on YouTube, which that is not the main focus yet. But in case you want to start the YouTube or you are on YouTube already, this video is a must watch for you. Podcasts give your audience another way to connect with you and your voice. On YouTube, a podcast show is a playlist, and podcast episodes are videos in that playlist. Don't get confused yet. Just stick with me. I'm going to explain everything in the simplest way possible. Podcast contents are being created mostly on episodic format. This should be a topic of discussion in our next or future video. So if you want to know more about podcast content, please leave a comment in the comment section. So in case you want to start creating a podcast content on your YouTube, these are what you need to do. Your podcast should only contain full-length episodes organized in an order that they should be consumed. In case your podcast has multiple seasons, please include them in the same playlist. You will understand this more if you really grab what I said earlier, that on YouTube, a podcast is a playlist, and the podcast episodes are the videos in that playlist. Now, before we continue, I would like to share with you the benefits you will be getting as a YouTube podcast creator. So what are the perks? Is it pronounced as perks? First, you'll be getting official search cards on YouTube. Second, you get badges on your podcast and video content on YouTube. The last part, which is always the most important one, is that your podcast content will be available in YT Music app. Now, going by all what I explained earlier, you can just simply turn your YouTube playlist into a podcast, which I'm going to share a step-by-step guide with you on how to do that. But before then, I would like you to kindly note that some playlists aren't eligible for podcast features, even if you designate them as podcasts. That's if ineligible contents include, but isn't limited to. This simply means that if the contents are not owned by the creator. Well, I believe you should know that YouTube are very strict on copyrighted materials. Now, in case you want to start utilizing the podcast feature on YouTube, I'm here to tell you that it's been very simple, which I'm going to share with you the step-by-step guide on how to get the best out of it. Now, if you want to create a podcast content on YouTube, you need to visit the YouTube studio on either your PC or your desktop. If you are using a smartphone, you can do that as well. You just need to visit your Chrome browser, type on studio.youtube.com, hit on the search button, and it's going to load and display the YouTube studio for you. In order to get the best out of the YouTube studio display on your smartphone, you need to turn on the desktop mode. Turning on the desktop mode on your smartphone will grant you the access of having the same view as the PC and the desktop. After visiting the YouTube studio, you move straight up to the create button and click on it. Then scroll down to new podcast, click on it as well. You will have this dialog box. In the first box, you have to input the title of your podcast. In the second box, you have to describe what your podcast is all about. Then below here, you have to import a square size image for your podcast. Then after that, you have to click on the create icon. That's how you create a podcast content on your YouTube channel. But that's not all, because you can set an existing playlist as a podcast. How do you do that? Within the YT Studio, go to Content, scroll to Playlists. Hover over the playlist you want to designate as a podcast. Click Menu, Set as Podcast. You should review your podcast details and set a square size podcast thumbnail. Podcast details includes the title, the description, and who can view your podcast on YouTube. Click create to confirm your changes. But please, I want you to bear in mind that if your podcast episode violates YouTube's copyright policies, your content may not be eligible for YouTube podcast features. 2. Only set a playlist as a podcast if it contains a full podcast episode. If you have an additional set of playlists for seasons or clips, do not set this playlist as podcast. Now, should in case you want to remove a podcasting feature on your playlist, yes, maybe you've turned your playlist into a podcast and you want to take it back to a playlist, this is how we go about it. Within YouTube Studio as well, go to content and to playlists. Further onto the playlist you want to unset as a podcast. Click on the menu next to the podcast you want to remove the features from. Select set as playlist. Click yes to confirm. It's very easy, right? Now, this is going to be the first bonus tips I'm going to give you. But please, before we dive into that, make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Make sure you follow us on Facebook so that we'll have much coverage to bring you more of this. As I forgot to mention, please don't forget to share this video so that a lot of people will get to benefit from it. What are the best practices for podcast creators? This is the first bonus tip I'm going to share with you. Now, why you should create a public podcast or studio for each and every podcast show on your channel. This simply means that while selecting the audience that will watch your podcast, please always leave it in public. And at the same time, your podcast should only contain full-length episodes from all seasons in the order that they are meant to be consumed. This will help the fans of your podcast to find all the episodes in one place, therefore increasing your retention rate. And you know, your retention rates in the platform simply increases the chances of you getting found in the platform. 3. To make sure your audiences has a smooth listening experience, please avoid all that I'm about to mention. Number 1, mixing clips. Mixing different shows or uploads from other channels within your podcast. Trust me, this is going to hurt you a lot. Please avoid breaking up seasons into different podcasts. The next on this is you should use the same name on your podcast show as your podcast title. This makes it easier for your audience to find you on YouTube. Please don't add extra name to your podcast titles, including the word podcast. But you can do that only if that is part of your podcast show's name. The last on this, but very important, you should always add a detailed description to your podcast. Describing your podcast helps new listeners to discover your show. The last tip for today is tip on how to name your podcast. Please, I'm still reminding you that if you haven't subscribed to this YouTube channel yet, please subscribe, like this video, and don't forget to share this video. Please follow us on our Facebook page so that we'll have much more courage to bring you more of this. Naming your podcast the right way will help new listeners to discover you much more faster. While giving your podcast a title, please avoid generic podcast titles. Titles such as the word full episode, new uploads, podcast, etc. If your podcast title is too vague, man, I don't even know how to pronounce this name. YouTube will replace your podcast title with your channel name in the YT Music app, which I don't have to tell that it's going to hurt you. You won't like it. So that's it for today. You can drop your questions in the comment section and tell me the part you like the most in the video. In case you need anything, we are always here for you. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Don't forget to